I'm Wijnand Ijsselsteijn. I'm an assistant professor at the Human Technology Interaction Group of the Eindhoven University of Technology. And my specialty is in psychology of media. I'm currently working on multiple projects, but I guess for this particular interview, there's a number of projects relating to presence as well that we're working on. One of the things was presented earlier today actually is the work on embodiment, bodily identification, and especially how non-biological props and tools can become part of our body, both our body schema but also our sense of bodily identification. Another project that I'm currently involved in is more on the side of telerobotics, which has to do with minimally invasive surgery and assisting surgeons to give them haptic feedback as well when they're doing their surgery. So, and at the moment we find that the dominant system in this area is the Da Vinci system, which doesn't give any haptic feedback, and surgeons complain about that. They would like to have that haptic feedback. So those are two projects that are directly related to presence. We have another couple of projects that are more related to social presence, if you like, which are more communication related. And we're working, for instance, on the Passion project, where we're looking at how to enrich current communication media with contextual data, such that people can have a better mental model of the other person, and also have more emotional connectedness and more of group identification. So. I'm quite inclined to just try and limit it a bit. For presence, I would say it's the sense of being there in a mediated environment, and it's. It is actually not just a subjective experience. It should also be conceptualized as an experience, as a phenomenon that can be measurable at multiple levels of responses. So, for my PhD work, I've looked at, for instance, behavioral indicators of presence. So we looked at how people respond posturally to certain mediated stimuli, and see if that correlates with subjective indicators of presence. So shorthand definition, I'm still sort of sticking with that. I'm aware of the other definitions, for instance, the one by Lombard and Ditton on perceptual illusion of non-mediation. I think it's very elegant to describe the large body of literature that's out there, but I do feel that there's a bit of a, how could you call it, scope creep, if you like. There's a bit of a problem with delimiting exactly what we mean and what we're measuring in particular experiments. So I think whatever your definition is, you should probably be very explicit about it up front, so that everybody knows that, oh, this is the kind of presence I'm working on, and not just call everything presence. There's a risk there, I think, in this field, that we have too many divergent views actually of what is presence. So. Yes, I think there's a great need for focusing in terms of definitions, so that we all know exactly what we're talking about. I don't think there's a need for focusing in terms of the number of disciplines that are occupying themselves with presence, because I do think it's a very rich phenomenon that will attract scientists from a number of fields. And as long as we agree on sort of a common vocabulary and preferably also a common set of measures, then I think a number of different disciplines can reflect on this phenomenon of presence from their own unique viewpoint, and they will also take different things from the presence research field. I mean, an engineer who wants to optimize the sense of telepresence for a telerobotic system is different from someone who's into researching entertainment systems for games, for instance. Presence experience is important for both fields, but in a very different way. But they can take from that field, I think, and also contribute to that field in valid ways. So I would not be restrictive in terms of the kinds of disciplines that will be involved in this. I would say it's a science, but that's also reflecting my personal bias. I think it as a research field, it includes both technological sciences as well as the humanities, so more the social sciences, if you like, and also neuroscience. But there is definitely also a very important technological component to engendering presence and trying to engender it. Where would I situate the discipline of? I would see it as a multidisciplinary undertaking, which is going to be positioned, I think, somewhere in the playing fields of telecommunication, computer science, psychology, neuroscience, perhaps some of the other engineering, but also social sciences. But that's an interesting question. When I was I applied actually for a PhD scholarship at the university where I got the job, and basically they were looking at stereoscopic displays. So they were, and one of the things that we found when we were looking at stereo displays is they wanted me to evaluate them in terms of their perceptual experience. And one thing that we found was that a term like image quality, which would be used typically for evaluating displays, was not sufficient to describe the complete experience that people were having if they're confronted with a volume in space, let's say. So, and then we sort of thought of the concept of presence as one potential evaluation metric in these more immersive displays. And from one thing led to the other, and I got involved also with the European Commission in this work. I gave a presentation in the US, and actually this was picked up by some people from the Commission, and they actually asked me to write a vision document, which ended up to be the basis for the first call of the Presence projects funded by the European Commission. So that was actually that was leveraging the work to a higher level where many other researchers were entering the field, and there was some money to go around, and that actually helped us and the field, I think, a great deal to keep on investing in it and broadening the scope. I don't think we have cracked the main issues yet. I think I have a sense, an intuition that presence is very important for understanding also some of the brain processes behind consciousness, and it might be a path into that area. Also, what we're working on, the bodily self-identification. I think the media environments allow us to play and to manipulate with all kinds of experiences in ways that unmediated environments do not allow. So I see presence technology also as a tool to research the mind. And as a psychologist, I'm really curious about how that mind works and how the brain works. And I'm also, I think it's also, just from face value, it's a very cool area because it really gives, you stay in touch with the latest developments in media. There's a lot of interesting experiences to be had in media nowadays. So that's also, I think, a particularly appealing aspect of this area. I think there are already applications mainly, I think, in telerobotics. There's a very real application there, and then there's, I think, also a large research effort being pointing in that direction. But there's also in telecollaboration and teleconferencing. I think there's a really big interest at the moment, which is a recent upsurge actually of interest by companies like Hewlett-Packard, Cisco Systems, you name it. They're all launching last year. They've all launched telepresence systems. They call them actually telepresence systems, which would help business people in in just not having to meet, just deleting a bit of the travel necessities, and also enabling teams to work more effectively together. Now, for them, for this industry, it's about real dollars. And so the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So on the research side, we can be very philosophical about the topic, but they have to sell those systems. But if they can optimize the telepresence experience, they will sell more of these systems. So I think this field is definitely a growth market for our research area. I sympathize with what Matthew Lombard mentioned this morning, that the hassle of travel is just it's interesting to see that presence researchers have to still come together physically in the same space, in the same city, and have to bear all the hassle of travel. Whereas I would think that it would be nice, although I really like being in Barcelona, but it would be nice also to be able to give a good telepresence experience for multiple parties, such that, for instance, in a conference like this, you could actually join without feeling, you're missing out on major interaction, major communication cues. So I think there's a problem to be solved there, and it would be interesting to approach that, and I would be personally interested in having that system if it works. So. There are some ethical issues, I guess, but I think what we've done in the field in general is we've started this discussion on ethics, and I think it is good to keep appraised of those issues and to be aware of them. On the other hand, I feel that the presence field in itself is not inherently unethical. Of course, there are applications of presence technology which I find doubtful myself. And it's no secret that a lot of presence technologies have been funded by, for instance, military institutions to, give better training grounds to create better soldiers, for instance. Now, this is not a particular application that appeals to me, but then again, I guess there's a need for that as well, and there's money, and there's good money in it. So I guess each presence researcher for themselves just weighs the importance of that they give to staying away from certain topic areas or not. So I'm not the judge of that, I would say. Well, since I'm working in haptics partly, I think it's let me rephrase it. I think full body interfaces are interesting, and there is some full body tracking available, but these are very intrusive systems and a very expensive system. So I guess in essence, a lot of the systems that I would like are already around in some shape or form, but they're very costly, and they're usually very. You're introducing all kinds of intrusions onto the bodily, integrity, if you like, the freedom of movement of the person, which hampers, I think, the interaction and the fluency of interaction with a mediated environment. So that's one thing I would think is hampering progress a little. And also I think an active field of research is trying to find reliable measures for experience. This is very important for presence because in the end it's about also creating this experience and optimizing this experience and seeing what technological factors weigh into that equation of optimizing presence. But to do this properly, we need good measures, and I think we're still in early days in terms of finding those. So we have a number of questionnaires out there. There are a number of objective correlates, if you like, but they're very, variable results found with those when relating to those measurement methodologies. I'm talking now about GSR, for instance, so galvanic skin response, or also the research that I did on postural responses is definitely, I wouldn't recommend that as a measure of presence at the moment, because it's such a lot of work and it's very noisy, and I think a lot of those measures have these complications. So yes, I would like to have a better grasp of trying to quantify the experience, let's say. Well, there are always lots of experiments that we would like to do. I think I can't complain. I mean, as a lab, we're fairly well outfitted, and we have good people. So I'm quite happy doing what we're doing. But I wouldn't mind to have more of say, full body interface kind of interaction devices, and doing experiments on similar to what we're doing with the rubber hand illusion and the virtual rubber hand illusion, and extend that to a full body experience, and also be able to implement that into, for instance, gaming scenarios or other scenarios. So there's for us there's a niche in this area that we still want to invest in. I'm not sure whether presence research as such is doing that. I think the availability of high-end media technology is doing that, and as technological progress is speeding up, and people are getting more and more immersive and very realistic experiences. There will be a point, I think, at which people will not be aware maybe of the fact that they're not looking, for instance, through a window, but at a display. And that's actually a point where I'm very interested in. And I think there's an interesting paradox there, where if these media get completely optimized, people will have presence experiences without actually being aware that it's a medium. So actually to them, it will not be a particularly interesting experience unless they're made aware again that it's a medium that they're looking at. So for instance, say I'm not really physically here, but this is my projected hologram, and you find out during the interview that I'm actually a hologram sitting here talking to you. You might be quite, triggered, like, oh, this is a very convincing, convincing medium. And I think it would, if you can simulate experiences to a level of fidelity that will match or compete with reality. Don't know if you want to, but if you do that, yeah, there will be. I think people will be confused about what is real, what is not. At the moment, I don't think media can do that quite convincingly. There might be some exceptions, but usually people are well aware that they're interacting with a medium and that there's a mediated environment out there, and still, they respond to it in many ways that we expect them to respond to reality, actually. So it's important to actually distinguish different levels of processing there. So the cognitive sort of knowledge level is not being fooled by current media representations, but at the lower levels, at the psychophys level, at the behavior response level, we are actually responding to media as if they are real. So in that sense, our body doesn't distinguish, because of course in the evolutionary history of mankind, the last 100 years of all the media that's been introduced is just a small blip. And our biological system has not adjusted to that kind of a simulation versus reality distinction yet. Well, it certainly has tuned me to media developments and keeping in sort of appraised of what are criteria for reality, for instance. So what kind of experience should we produce for people such that they will accept it as a more real experience, as a substitute reality, if you like. And there's I think in more the artistic and design side of it, I think people have a very good intuitive sense of how to produce that, and we're trying to approach it from a more scientific point of view, seeing, you know, if we can manipulate all those factors, and definitely doing that and having done that in the past has changed my sensibilities for what media can do. I would say one central question is how do people know the difference between a mediated environment and a real environment, and how can we know at what level we should look for now let me rephrase that. What's important is to me is to see whether people are able to distinguish between real and virtual, and the kinds of cues that make them accept virtual realities as real, or that make them act in virtual realities as if they are real, are highly fascinating to me, and those are actually the cues that I'm after.